Hey, what's happening? Jason Woodland here with Always the Journey TV. We are rocking and rolling on episode number 49. So extremely excited. And I wanted to sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart for dedicating your time to watching these interviews of all these amazing and wonderful and talented people within the community so we can learn more about their businesses, their jobs, their music, their art, their side hustles, their event spaces, their podcasts, and everything in between. Utah specifically has an unbelievable talent pool, and I'm extremely excited about showcasing it and showing it off and all these wonderful friends. So just wanted to say that, and thanks again for tuning in. Today, I'm ultra excited about plugging in with my friend Chris Holifield. He is one of the hosts and producers of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. I know you've heard of it, and I know you've tuned in, and if you haven't, you better jump on that. Chris is a linchpin within the community. He is always out there supporting others and shouting out local businesses. And that's one of the many things that I love about this guy. He's a hardcore local supporter, and he's just an all-around good guy. He's self-taught in the podcasting world, which is really amazing because I know when I got in the podcasting world, I'm very thankful that I was able to lean on Chris on a handful of occasions to learn a little bit about some of those intricacies, especially in the post-production side of things. It can be a little bit interesting. But anyway, yeah, he's self-taught. He believes everyone should have an opportunity to share their story, which is really cool. And even though he was born and raised in California, he will always call Utah home. He lives in Salt Lake City, Utah with his wife, Krissie, and their 4 kids. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce my friend, Chris Holifield. What's happening, my man?
Hey, not much, Jason. How's it going? Thanks for having me on your podcast. Finally, episode 49. That is awesome. I'm stoked to be here.
Dude, thank you so much, man. It's a real honor to have you here. Of course, I've been following your podcast for many years, as I know a multitude of people all around Utah, actually all around probably the world at this point, have been following your podcast to learn about all these amazing businesses within our beautiful and amazing city and state at large. So it's good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I've got a few questions for you. Of course, sort of straightforward questions, but I want to learn a little bit more about what was your original inspiration to start, not only in the podcasting world in general, if we can maybe two-part that. What was your inspiration starting a podcast, and what was the inspiration to be more local-centric on that podcast?
It's a big question, so hopefully I can give you a longer condensed version for the sake of the listeners, so that don't completely bore them. But I'm going to take you back to about 2009, 2010. I was really involved with Twitter. I would get on there, and I would just kind of like little mini blog posts, so to say. And you post your pictures and what you were doing, what you were eating. It was kind of the way we interacted, right? That was the social media back then. I started connecting with other bloggers during this time, and I would try blogging on a website and writing and this and that. And I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy doing all the typing and all that, but I was like, I like this creative side of the internet. And there really wasn't, video wasn't popular yet. There really wasn't a whole lot there. I mean, Facebook was coming around, but everything was text and written, and I wasn't the best with that. So anyway, to make a long story short, kind of going forward, I connected with this blogger that recommended I start a podcast. And I was like, well, what's a podcast? What is that all about? Tell me about it. And they're like, well, it's like radio. And I'm like, well, I've always liked talk radio, and I've liked, I like listening to radio. I'll check it out. I'll look into it. I didn't know what I wanted to do a podcast about, though. So it was kind of one of those things that was in the back of my mind. And it was like, well, what do I want to do a podcast about? We live in Utah. It's not like we have all these famous people to interview. And so it was always kind of one of those things that I was tossing around and thinking about. And then one day I was at the downtown farmers market. I was helping my ex-wife, my wife at the time. She made women's clothing and would sell them every Saturday at the downtown farmers market. And one Saturday it hit me, and I still remember I was on the very far west side of the downtown farmers market at Pioneer Park there. And I was like, what if I interviewed all of these people, right? Like, we don't know their stories. Cause I kind of was curious, like what caused some of the people to do the things they did, what inspired them, what motivated them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, what if I interviewed them? And it just kind of it snowballed into what it is from that moment. Really, it was just kind of like I started telling people, and they're like, "I love that idea." There were actually some people that were like, "Oh, that's a really dumb idea. Nobody will listen. There's not enough podcast listeners in Utah," and it basically saying it was a stupid idea, and only 30 people will listen. And only you'll probably be lucky to find 30 or 40 people. And I was like, well, 30 or 40 people, still a good amount of people. I mean, that's a classroom if you really think about it.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, so and then I was like, well, what if I just started it to learn how to podcast, right? Like, what if I just started this podcast about Salt Lake to just kind of get my feet wet and not really even continue with it? Well, 9 years later, almost now is the end of, almost 9 years of doing it. So it wasn't just a little project in the beginning, but yeah, so that's the quick version. I mean, I wanted to do something with blogging, but my writing sucked at the time. My grammar sucked at the time. So I was like, let's do audio. Let's do a podcast. Let's do it about Salt Lake City, because I was involved in that community anyways. I don't know if you remember, like, back in like Craft Sabbath, they used to do that down at the downtown library on Sundays. I think you used to come out to it, maybe.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
my business partner, or my former business partner, and I, we had that tea company, and we'd come down there.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Okay, that's right. You were involved with it too, so you knew what. Yeah. Back then, so yeah, man, those were I was involved in that community. I had the people at my fingertips to interview them. Everybody had a rad story, because a lot of times these people were working a 9 to 5 and then coming home and working their 5 to 9. It was like, all right, this is cool. What motivates you? And then the coolest thing, Jason, is one of the biggest things that I tried to portray, especially in the beginning, was how much we all inspire and influence each other. Like, if it wasn't for you, maybe this other thing wouldn't exist, right? Like, and if it wasn't for this project, maybe this wouldn't happen. And especially 9-10 years ago, when the concept of this podcast was starting, Salt Lake City was a much different city.
Yeah.
Right. It was a lot smaller than it is now. And everybody knew everybody. I'd like to say everybody still knows everybody, but not really. I mean, Salt Lake's a different city, man. We've gotten a lot bigger. Yeah. So it was supposed to just be this big, inspiration, motivation podcast. Let's get to know our community, and let's have fun with each other.
Man, I love that. And you've done such a phenomenal job. For fun, let's say on your first few episodes, how many listeners did you have in the very beginning? So, I mean, someone told you were only going to have 30.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Well, I remember actually thinking, oh, this thing is just going to explode, right? Like, I'm thinking, this is such a crazy, unique idea. These people that say nobody's going to listen, they don't know what they're talking about. Of course, back then we had no idea how people even found podcasts. So this idea that 1 million people would listen. But anyways, I remember that first week after that, like my first episode, there were like 8 listens. 8 people, man. And for all I know, it could have been me all 8 times. I don't know. Yeah. But I just remember that number 8 flashing back at me. And, that they're still getting listened to. I mean, that's the cool thing about podcasts too, is they're still getting listened to. And I don't know what the numbers are now on that specific episode, because it's still getting downloaded. And that's what's really cool too. And I'll say this too, like even for businesses that are looking for like advertising. I mean, you talk about, okay, Urban Lounge, right? I know you know Urban Lounge, Jason. We had a partnership in the beginning of the podcast days. Those ads are still being read on the beginning episodes, and they're still getting, Urban Lounge is still getting advertising for that.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's great because it's not like a radio, right? Where you listen to it once and it's gone.
Right. Good point.
So
that's a very good point.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more specifically about the podcast in general. So, I mean, you've been really doing this almost on a full-time basis for quite some time. I mean, you're dedicating a lot of time to, production work. You have advertisers, and part of what I want to know is, for some of my listeners, are they able to reach out to you and potentially advertise with you? Like, tell us a little bit more what that looks like.
Well, there's a few questions in there, Jason. So would you want to start with advertising, or
yeah, sure.
Do you want to start with so advertising? Absolutely. I mean, if you're a local a business, especially, reach out. If you're a good fit, if I feel you're a good fit, if you feel like you're a good fit, and I see that it could work for my audience, I'll probably work with you. If you don't seem like a good fit, I probably wouldn't work with you. I don't like to put a ton of ads on the podcast. So I'm not going to, put a ton on there, but if there's room and you're a good fit, reach out.
Nice.
I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for. I don't know.
No, it is.
I mean, we have a few different packages. We have some sponsorship media kits that I can email you if you're interested in whatnot. And it shows kind of the different numbers and stats and groups, and even, who we've worked with. We've worked with a lot of different businesses, and we will work. There's been some national companies that we've worked with that are doing things maybe here in Salt Lake or in Utah, or that I feel is a fit. And as long as they're not like, I'm not going to do like Walmart or something, right? Because that's going to kill local business. Right. But
yeah, very good point. And then as far as the people that you're interviewing within your podcast, it really runs the gamut. I mean, you're talking to everybody from artists to business owners. You've had politicians, from what I remember, on there. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the criteria might look like of someone who you're looking for to interview?
When I started it, I mean, the idea was to highlight the counterculture of Salt Lake City. Obviously, a lot has changed in Utah. People have changed. I've even changed a little bit, right? My interests have maybe changed. So a lot of it really recently is like more things either I'm interested in, or Krissie's interested in, or somebody who's reached out to me and I'm like, oh, that could be cool. That could be something fun to chat about. Because really at this point, we're interviewing, we have one episode a week. I probably have 100 people a week reaching out to me.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like, I gotta, it's like, I don't know, and a lot of it's like, okay, this person sounds interesting. And then they could do it, when we were juggling, because I got, like I said, we got 4 kids. So we're juggling 4 kids around. Krissie co-hosts it with me. So we got her scheduled to juggle, so there's multiple people. So that's half the battle too, of getting people on the show. It's not as easy as, when I started the podcast, it was very much just like this, where it was just one-on-one, and I had no kids. And life was different. So it was a much different show, even in that case, back then.
Wow. That's very interesting. And one a week, I mean, that's some really good dedication. And you've been doing one a week almost the entire time, right?
Well, when I started it, I did 2 a week, actually. Wow. I was doing 2 a week. I was working full time. I did 2 episodes a week when I started. I had a full-time job, working in a granite warehouse, selling granite slabs, right? And I was going to night classes at Salt Lake Community College. That's what I don't know how I did it. I didn't have kids though at the time,
Yeah.
So I think that's really what I think the kids think. But yeah, so then Then I actually got some complaints from listeners saying, "Oh, that's too much content," right? They couldn't keep up with it. And so I was like, well, maybe there's some truth to that. And so I cut it back to one episode a week. And I can't say, what that would be like now, 9 years later, if there would be 2 episodes a week or not. But I do understand. I mean, there's so much content out there, Jason. I mean, you know how it is. Books and movies, podcasts, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, whatever. It's like, how do you consume it all?
Man, it's so true. It's amazing. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, even Hollywood themselves are having a tough time with how much content there is out there, because now they're having to compete with original series on Netflix and, Hulu and all these other places. And they're, we're creating all these new actors and actresses, and it's no longer Hollywood's game. It's everybody's game. It's really sort of been decentralized in terms of content creation and podcasting and all that stuff.
Well, and think about all the media that you can't listen to or consume or read, right? Like, I know there's tons of podcasts I'm always unsubscribing, right? And it's not because they're not good. It's just I don't have time.
Yeah.
So when I look at my numbers, right, like, or if I try to figure out if I'm still creating a good show, it's like, am I creating a show I like, right? Because ultimately that's what's important. Because maybe your numbers went down 100 listens, or maybe, they cut in half, or maybe they're just not what they used to be, or maybe they went up. I don't know, but there's just a lot more out there for people to consume. So it doesn't mean you have bad stuff. It just means you haven't maybe found all your right listeners yet.
Yep, exactly. And that takes a bit of time. I think that the concept of content creation and podcasting and video casting and all these things, it can be, I think, it can freak people out, because they think, like everybody, when they step into it, that it's going to blow up and it's going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread. And it's just not the case. It takes time for people to know who you are and learn about what you're trying to produce. And like you just said, to find your viewership or your listenership or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Or your tribe, really. Yeah.
Your tribe. That's spot on right there.
Yeah.
So Chris, tell us a little bit more about the geographic locations that you cover. Obviously, you're called I Am Salt Lake, but does that mean that you're only really wanting to speak with people within Salt Lake, or do you really look at Utah in general, or would you ever speak with someone outside of Utah? Tell us a little bit more about that.
That's a great question, because it's actually been kind of this thing that still lingers in my head. It's like, when I chat with somebody, say from Ogden or Park City, I'm like, should I be doing this? Is this anyway? When I started the podcast, that was kind of when I was trying to figure out how to do it and whatnot. Slug Magazine was a big inspiration for me. It's always been a big inspiration.
Those guys are awesome.
I love them. I love them. And they always covered everybody, right? They talked to people in Provo and in Ogden and Park City. And
good point.
It's Salt Lake Underground, right? That's the technical term of Slug. That's the acronym or whatever, right? So it made me feel a little better, because I'm like, you know what? There's some awesome musicians in Provo, or there's a really good distillery in Park City, or there's, this person in Ogden, or this cool business. And it's like, I didn't want that to be a completely, a wall in there. I wanted that option to be there if it came up. Now, granted, I'm not going to go out of my way to track down every business in Ogden or every business in Park City or every person in Provo. But if the opportunity arises, I absolutely would chat with them. There have been a couple of times that I've actually have chatted with people that weren't from Utah. If you go back to, I want to say it's in the 100s, it's like 180 something. Quite a while ago, figure we're almost to episode 500. So back about 180, there were a couple of comedians that came to Salt Lake City, and I was doing some recording at this comedy show. I took my gear there to do some recording, and had some really cool interviews with some traveling comedians. And, I was trying to get their perspective. I figured, well, maybe if I got their perspective of Utah and what they thought of Salt Lake City and blah, 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 it would fit well. And I did it, and they're released, and I mean, they're still available. I'm pretty sure they should still be up and available to listen to, but I never really felt like it made sense. I was like, well, this isn't the idea of the show. Is each person is Salt Lake, thus I am Salt Lake. And it just never made sense. And so that was why that was kind of a few episodes in there that I did. But I try to stay in the valley, right? Like, let's say the Wasatch Front.
Nice. Okay, cool. So as far as your listenership, who is your sort of target market? Who wants to listen to I Am Salt Lake?
I would say it's a 34-year-old single white male that lives in the avenues and drives a Subaru. No, I'm kidding. But
Holy moly, dude.
No, well, that is. I mean, honestly, I would say the person that listens to I Am Salt Lake is somebody who's probably involved in the, kind of more the counterculture, underground, do-it-yourself communities, whether that's the arts and the crafts, or whether that's the comedy scene, or even, the local mom and pop food places. But they're the late 20s, early 30s person. I don't want to say male, female, because whatever.
Yeah.
They probably live in the avenues or in Sugar House. That's really, I mean, because that tends to be where my audience resides.
Nice. That's really cool. And let's learn a little bit about what are the platforms that you can be found on. I mean, I know all of them, but can you specify a little bit more clear? So if someone wants to jump in, which I know they will, where can they find you?
Well, that's what's cool is you can actually say really any streaming device, any device that you can find audio on. I mean, it's on Pandora, Audible, Spotify. I mean, really in any audio listening streaming device, you can just type in I Am Salt Lake and you'll find it.
Nice. Yeah. And that's what I found as well. I mean, everywhere you can find I Am Salt Lake. So be sure to tune in and check them out, because I mean, you've got some phenomenal and way fun interviews with all kinds of people. I mean, every walk of life you can dream of. And I know that that my viewers, if they haven't heard of you already, they will now. And definitely check out I Am Salt Lake podcast. And you have another podcast that you're working on, or you were working on. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about it really quick. So I've been doing, it's about medical cannabis here in Utah. I started it about a year and a half ago. I actually brought a medical cannabis doctor on I Am Salt Lake, and it was such a great time. We hit it off, and he had such a good time on the podcast. And I hit him up and I said, "Hey, do you want to start this other show? I think medical cannabis is really great as like an option for instead of pain pills and all of that." And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And that's been a lot of fun. I mean, I think we've done about 60, about almost 70 episodes of that. And we've been chatting with patients and the pharmacists here in Utah that are working out of the dispensaries. And it's just been great, man.
Huh. I've got a couple of people that I could possibly refer over to you that are part of not that community per se, but I've got an attorney friend who is works in that space, and someone who's sort of a lobbyist in that space. We can talk after the show.
Yeah. No, who knows? Maybe I know him. Maybe
you probably do.
But and another cool thing about it is both podcasts work very well together. So that was kind of another idea with it. I was like, well, maybe I can bring listeners over as a way to even grow I Am Salt Lake, right? Because it's like you're always trying to look for new ways for people to find your show, right? And so I was like, I bet you all these people that are interested in the cannabis industry would be interested in I Am Salt Lake. So
yeah, that's awesome. So if one of my listeners was interested in maybe learning more about how to advertise on your podcast, how would they get a hold of you?
You can just email me directly, Chris@iamsaltlake.com. And we could go from there.
Okay, I am, let's see, I am saltlake.com. Check this out. I'm seeing if I can.
There we go. Just like that. Boom, bada,
Boom.
bing. Yeah, no, seriously, reach out to me. And I mean, there's all kinds. We have different packages. I mean, we even do trades. Hey, there's something to think about too. If you got something, we could do like a trade advertising deal or something. So
yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. So as we move to a wrap up, I like to ask this question: what is one of your favorite quotes, favorite songs, or both?
Man, I should have had this prepared. I thought something would come to the tip of my tongue, but you know what? Okay. There's something. When I met Krissie's been a really big inspiration for me and a big motivator and really one of those people. It's like, Chris, get off your butt and just get after it. And I struggle with imposter syndrome really, really bad. And there's a quote, the fake it till you make it, right? You know what I mean? So so that is something I live by. Just fake it till you make it. And you're going to, and it's working for me. And so that's a quote thing I would leave with the listeners. You just got to keep doing it and just keep faking it, man. Even
that's awesome.
even if you're not really faking it, right? Even if you just think you are.
Well, the thing is, you've made it. I mean, first of all, you're a master podcaster, if that's even a concept, or I just made it up if it didn't exist before. You're a master podcaster.
Well, thank you.
You're very talented at what you do. You're fun to listen to. You've got phenomenal sound. I mean, you've definitely got like such a great radio voice. And that's why you've got a successful podcast. I mean, that's why you're killing it out there. And that's why you've got 100 people a week that want to be on your show. So, I mean, congratulations on all that. And also shout out to Krissie. She's freaking awesome. She's such a great person. And I think you guys are, work extremely well together. So that's just a lot of good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, no, she's my rock, man. And honestly, I couldn't ask for a better co-host for I Am Salt Lake either, So if she's listening, thank you for co-hosting it with me, even though it was a struggle to get her on as a co-host. That was a struggle.
That's awesome. So as we start opening back up, what are let's say one thing that you're the most excited about getting back in tune this post-COVID experience? Is it concerts? Is it movies? Is it travel? Just for fun, what is it?
Honestly, in-person interviews, man. I was doing interviews like this over the last year for the podcast, and I like in-person interviews. There's something about it, man. There's something about you just feel them in the same room. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Well, that we've been doing really the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's cool. And you've got your own studio now at your place, right?
Yeah. When we moved into the house that we got here, there was some extra room, and originally we were going to build out the garage, but we've actually just been able to build out a room that in the house into a full-time studio. So that's been really cool to have it right here in the house. Yeah,
that's phenomenal. Because I mean, it's your sound and everything literally sounds like you've got a full-blown actual sound studio. So whatever you've done there, you've done a great job soundproofing it and making it awesome.
I'll invite you over here, Jason. I'll bring you over here. We'll get you, and that way you can come hang out and see what we got going on here.
Oh, I'd love to. That sounds like a lot of fun. Cool, Chris. Is there any final things that you'd like to share before we wrap up the show?
Not really. Thanks again, Jason, for inviting me on your podcast here and for doing what you're doing and for spotlighting. I mean, I've caught some of the shows, and I mean, you've had some mutual friends on here, so that's been fun to watch those. And just you keep doing what you're doing, because you're an inspiration and a motivation to a lot of people, and that you probably don't even realize.
Well, thanks, brother. I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and have you hang out in the green room for just a quick moment while I wrap up the show, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Chris. I appreciate being on.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in episode number 49, Always the Journey TV with Chris Holifield from I Am Salt Lake podcast. Be sure to check them out. They've got all kinds of amazing interviews. I mean, they've got hundreds of interviews, so you can stay busy for days, weeks, probably even months. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. And also, feel free to throw us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, which I know you did. And also, if you don't mind, maybe throw us a subscribe as well. Just hit that subscribe button. We'd sincerely appreciate it. And that way you can be notified for any future interviews we've got popping up. Thank you so much, and you have a magnificent rest of your week.